Hello, this is Leslie Cagle, and this is my take on the case study, the budget debacle. Section 1, summarize the case and establish the facts. Briardale Elementary, the school principal's Carl Santos. The school operates in a diverse community. It serves as a town community center in the evenings and weekends. Briardale has a population of 600 students. It is a K through 5 school, and it is one of 6 schools within the community. Briardale is established a school with a solid reputation, which is proven in the fact that all of its teachers have been there their entire careers, and there's very few resignations or transfers. Um, the curriculum focuses on basic skills. There are funds to support the curriculum, and it is managed by the superintendent. However, for their supplementary curriculum, such as music, art, or foreign languages, that is something that is separate from their regular curriculum. The funds that are allocated are competed for, and they have competitions between the schools because the schools that raise more money feel like they should be allocated more funds. So there's a little bit of animosity between them. Each school has a parent organization called the Foundation. The Foundation pays for the art, music, and foreign language. There's a new president for Briardale, and his name is Mr. Barely. Mr. Barely is an acquaintance of another foundation president at another school, Mr. Morley. Mr. Santos did give Mr. Barely an orientation to let him know what his role was as president of the foundation and what he needed to do within his position. Mr. Barely decides to have a cash raffle to raise money for the supplementary curriculum. He had actually seen this done before in his college days, and he thought that he could earn up to $100,000. So he runs it by the foundation board, and they said that they supported his plan, so he went with it. A member of the community tips off law enforcement, and on raffle night, Mr. Barely is arrested and charged with a misdemeanor charge. Briardale was on the front page of the newspaper, and they lost a lot of community support. Okay, what has happened? A new president of the foundation was nominated and had taken over for his first year. The new president was Mr. Barely, and he decided to have a raffle for cash event to raise money for supplementary programs. When and where did the events take place? The events took place at Briardale Elementary School. So that's where the raffle was attended. Who was involved and what do they have to say about the events? The key players in this study would be the principal, Mr. Santos, because he's responsible for all of this, and the new president of the foundation, Mr. Barely. We have led to believe that neither men knew that what they were doing was illegal. Mr. Barely was arrested for the raffle for cash event. He was arrested at the event, and questions to be considered was the district aware of it? Did the district know that he was putting on the event? Did the district know if it was illegal or not? Was the state and the federal government notified so that proper precautions for games of chance could be set up? If illegally held, is it safe to assume that the money earned that night was confiscated by the police And now the foundation and the school has no money for the students' supplementary programs. Community relations restoration in response to the front page. Another problem would be the community relations restoration in response to the front page story that was ran on Arendelle. Negative publicity in the local paper embarrassing the school, the district, and many members of the faculty and the foundation volunteers. Section 2, report. What is the legal or the ethical issues? Some of the legal issues is going to be that you have to follow federal and state raffle laws regulating gambling activities. So anytime cash is exchanged, they have to set that up and there has to be permits. There are restrictions that have to be followed. So permits are needed. Only nonprofit groups with federal 501c tax status are eligible to conduct fundraising raffles and other charitable gaming activities. And even with permission, you have to have the permits. You still must set up the function and get the paperwork. Your group must follow federal and state raffle laws regulating gambling activities. There also has to be something set up where, in the event that somebody wins the raffle, they are able to pay taxes on that money. Some of the ethical issues. Mr. Santos had to have had knowledge of what Mr. Barely had in mind for fundraising. Mr. Santos should have had the knowledge to investigate any legal implications that could come back on the school in which he was responsible for. In this case study, Mr. Santos does not take responsibility for his role. He doesn't take responsibility for the knowledge of the event taking place or any legal responsibility in the fact that he knew what was going on as well. The question is, was the district aware? If not, shouldn't they have been? Because although Mr. Santos is the principal, the district should have still known that something was taking place within the facility. And the principal should have contacted somebody within the district office, making them aware of cash coming in and out of the building. Was there a cash fund used? Communication with the district in regards of auditing or accounting departments. I'm also a little surprised that with this being an event for a school with students and it's a nonprofit, it makes me kind of curious as to why the community or the police had decided to come and break it up on the night of the raffle instead of just seeing if they had the paperwork they needed and just making them aware that maybe they were making mistakes and to give them a chance to fix it beforehand. Section 3, exactly what has happened in a single sentence. So, due to the lack of knowledge on government laws and regulations, Briardale must take responsibility for all areas of the mistake, regain good standing within the community, raise funding for supplemental curriculum for the following year, and develop a new system in which to prevent future negligence in fundraising. Section 4, synthesize the facts. People. So the people involved in this case study would have been Mr. Santos, who met with Mr. Barely and made him aware of his job and his role as the foundation president. Mr. Barely, who was well educated, a Harvard graduate. He was motivated, he was competitive, and he considered himself more than qualified for the position. Mr. Barely did present his idea to the foundation board, and they did approve his idea. Clearly, they did not know the laws and regulations, and Mr. Barely was charged with a misdemeanor. The foundation committee is made up of parents, and they approved the raffle plan. That we know. And we still don't know what administration knew about the event. And we do know that Mr. Morley, who is also a foundation president in a competing school, was aware of the plan and that he likes to compete with Mr. Barely. And they're also competing for funding and for money. So it's kind of interesting. Section 4 is synthesizing the facts, places. So, really, Briardale is the only place in question during this case study. It's an elementary school, it's located right in the middle of town, and it's also used as a meeting center. So, spelling bees, town meetings, any of those things can occur right there at Briardale. It's, like I said, right in the middle of the community. It's one of 6 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and 1 high school. It housed the Rational Cash event, so the event took place there at Briardale. The police arrested the president foundation, Mr. Barely, there, and unfortunately, it made front page news for not following gaming laws. Section 4, synthesizing the facts, programs. Okay, so one of the programs would be the foundation. So that's like a PTO. It funds Briardale students with supplemental curriculum like music, art, and foreign languages. It's ran by parents, and it was aware of the raffle cash event, and they approved it. The other program would have been the district, and it is not documented if they were aware of the event. However, with the publicity that I'm sure they were using to sell tickets and the use of the facility right there at Briardale, I'm assuming they had knowledge. Then there was a superintendent who would have been aware of the issues involving funding and the competition between the schools for money, and with the supplies the schools with all the curriculum taught in their classrooms. Section 5, review and prioritize the information. So, is the situation damaging to stakeholders or to the community? It is absolutely damaging. You think about there's the students who, due to this negligence, will not have any funding. It can be assumed that when Mr. Barely was arrested, the money and the tickets were confiscated as evidence. So that money will not be there for the children anymore. Community members will no longer have trust in the school or its fundraising. So if we were to sell anything in the future, people really wouldn't want to buy or do anything for us. The foundation board members themselves will be embarrassed and damaged within the community because their names were on a lot of this stuff. The district itself will have a damaging reputation for not catching some of these mistakes in advance and for putting their name also on the event and the tickets. And then, of course, Briardale in itself will also have a reputation for the scandalous event. What groups have a stake in the outcome? That's just the students. Have all stakeholders been consulted? I would say yes, especially with the event going up in flames on the front page of the newspaper and having the police arrest people at the event. So I would say yes. And what do we still want to learn? I would still want to learn who had knowledge of the mistakes being made with the raffle cash event. I would also want to ensure that similar mistakes will not be made in the future. Section 6, what are the options? Okay, option 1 would be take responsibility. I would do a front page statement, an apology on how to ensure an apology like for the newspaper, and in the statement it would ensure the community that we wouldn't be making those mistakes again, and we would show them what steps we were taking to ensure that. And then I would also want to remind people that the importance of this resolving quickly is for the kids, that we're all just really trying to help the children. Policy initiative. I would want to invoke policy that creates checks and balances so that mistakes like this don't happen again. So if on some strange planet the superintendent wasn't aware of the event, maybe next time he should. So maybe next time Mr. Santos needs to fill out paperwork that proves he's did everything he needs to do on his end before he's able to host an event. Education. We need to structure and educate so mistakes are not made due to ignorance again. So we need to have different expectations. We need to have procedures that are in place so that not just one person is responsible, because if one person doesn't understand that there are laws and they overlook that, everybody kind of went down in a ball of flames. So I think it would be imperative that in the future we would need more hands involved, more brains involved, so that it's less likely an event, a mishap like this could occur in the future. So, like I said, if Santos had to report to someone else up in the district office about housing an event at the school, and what kind of event would it be, and do you have paperwork that allows that event to take place? Those are the kind of questions that could come from up above. Finding new funding for student supplementary curriculum. I think that is going to be up on the forefront right after cleaning up some of this mess. Is now the funding is gone, and we don't have the trust to really earn new funding. So, how are the kids going to get funding for school this year? So, that's something that really needs to be on the forefront of our concerns. I think we also need to provide consequences or to hold people accountable, such as Mr. Barely and possibly Mr. Santos, for their negligence in the situation. Option 2 would be just to allow Mr. Barely to take the fall, which so far in the case study he has, and to present stakeholders as he was the only one to have done any damage and it really wasn't our fault. Section 7, pros and cons. Option 1, pros. By accepting responsibility, it'll allow the community and the district to grow and adapt policy that will make us stronger and less apt to repeat mistakes. I also feel like it will show the community our integrity and restore faith in us. I believe that even if we chose to let Mr. Barely take responsibility for it all, there will be people that are aware that we had knowledge of it and didn't do anything. I think by standing up and taking responsibility with him, that it will show our community that we can be trusted, that we're responsible, and that we will take responsibility for our mistakes. Option 1, cons. We'll have to answer to our mistakes. We'll have to put in a lot of hard work to restore the faith within our community. And we will also have consequences as a result of our honesty. Section 7, pros and cons continued. Pros to option 2, we'll have no consequences or responsibility for the raffle. And cons to option 2 is there will be no integrity. We'll know it, and I think a good chunk of the community will know it. And there will be no trust. Nobody would ever trust us again if we didn't take responsibility for what happened. Section 8, I think the best thing we can do, weighing out the options, the pros and cons, is to take responsibility for our actions. Implementing the decision, so I'm choosing option 1, and I'm going to go ahead and continue on that path. So the question is, okay, what might happen? Okay, we're going to have difficulty with funding. We're going to have a lack of community support for a while. There may be legal consequences or may not when we step up and take responsibility. And there's going to be a lot of extra work involved. Who all needs to know? Everyone needs to know, which is why the first thing I wanted to do was to do some public relations and to get an ad out on the paper. So our biggest downfall was the event and the arrest, and it was all on the front page of the newspaper. So when cleaning it up and handling the apologies and stuff, I would want it to be first page on the newspaper to see if we can get it fixed. Thank you for your time.